Good morning. My name is Mike Heston. I'm the Riverside County District Attorney. Thank you for attending today. Today on the stage, I'm joined with U.S. Attorney Martina Estrada, DEA Special Agent in Charge William Bodner, San Bernardino County Assistant District Attorney Simon Umscheid, along with Steve Filson, who lost his daughter Jessica to fentanyl poisoning. We've come together today to share an important message about how fentanyl is impacting our communities in the Inland Empire. It's an epidemic that we're all facing. Each of our offices have worked on fentanyl in our respective ways, various initiatives. However, we've come together with our law enforcement partners to deliver a powerful and united message that fentanyl is death in disguise. The Riverside County District Attorney's Office continues the urgent work of educating our residents about the dangers of this deadly drug. And we hold those accountable who peddle this poison in our county and in our communities. Simply put, fentanyl is a deadly drug. It's devastating our communities. It's devastating our county. We realize that our youth are not aware of the dangers that they face. In 2021, our crime prevention unit attorneys began making presentations to youth across schools in Riverside County. They created presentations aimed at high school students that were designed specifically to grab and hold their attention. At the end of each presentation, we always have a parent come up to our presenters and share with them that they have lost a son or daughter to fentanyl poisoning. Similar presentations have been made to parents, community members, and local organizations. Thus far, our crime prevention unit has conducted more than 90 presentations, reaching nearly 12,000 students and community members. Our office is dedicated to taking a tough stance on prosecuting fentanyl dealers and those who provide drugs mixed with fentanyl. As I said, we must hold those accountable who are poisoning our community and our children with this deadly drug. As of today, our office has filed 20 cases of homicide, charging 21 defendants with fentanyl-related murder. We will not stop filing these cases in Riverside County. These victims and their families deserve justice. And to those who say that harsher penalties for fentanyl will not save lives, you're simply wrong. The data and plain common sense tells us that criminal justice policies have an enormous effect on the choices and the behavior of those who are criminally minded. So let me be clear. Drug dealers must know that if you peddle this poison in our county, we will prosecute you to the full extent of the law. If someone dies as a result of your choice to deal drugs, we will treat the case as a homicide, and where appropriate, we will prosecute you for murder. In addition to our local prosecutions, our office has partnered with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Central District of California, and I have assigned one of our deputy DAs to be cross-sworn as a Special Assistant United States Attorney called a SAUSA. The attorney is assigned to prosecute criminal cases in Riverside County and federal court. Our prosecutor focuses on violent felons who possess or traffic in firearms and dangerous drug dealers who traffic fentanyl. This is a valuable partnership, and we very much value because federal statutes often allow for more significant punishment and longer prison sentences for these dangerous criminals. At this time, I'd like to introduce, and you will hear from next, Martina Estrada. He will talk about the diligent work the U.S. Attorney's Office is doing to combat fentanyl. The office serves approximately 20 million residents, which includes the Inland Empire.
Good morning. My name is Martina Estrada. I'm the U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California, which includes Riverside and San Bernardino counties. I'm here to talk today about a public health crisis, and that public health crisis is the fentanyl epidemic we are all witnessing. This is a particularly acute crisis because it is targeting our youth. It is targeting our youth in an unprecedented way. And I'm here to tell you that we in law enforcement, both federal and state, are taking this extremely seriously and devoting our resources to combating this plague. Let me first talk about the magnitude of this problem. In the United States in 2021, more than 71,000 people died as a result of fentanyl poisonings. We don't have the numbers yet for 2022, but we expect it to be just as grim. Fentanyl poisoning is now the #1 source of death for people between the ages of 18 and 45. In the 7-county area that my office serves, fentanyl in just 3 years has increased in number of deaths 4 times. And in the Inland Empire, which again we serve and we partner with our local partners, it has caused untold destruction and death. In Riverside County alone, more than 400 people died as a result of fentanyl poisonings in 2021. And in San Bernardino County, over 300 people died as a result of fentanyl poisonings in 2021. As I said, we still don't have the 2022 numbers. We expect them to be just as grim. Because of that, it's imperative that we take action. We're taking action in a number of ways, including seizing large quantities of fentanyl from drug traffickers, including targeting powerful criminal organizations, both in this country and in Mexico, that are helping to traffic this poison. But I want to highlight 2 other ways that we are focused on today. First, we are working on education. It is imperative that we educate the public generally, but also our youth, dangers posed by fentanyl. Many of these fentanyl poisonings occur because someone thought they were buying a different type of drug or pharmaceutical and instead got something laced with fentanyl that resulted in their death. These are poisonings, and they're happening throughout our community. We have ramped up our public outreach efforts. The DEA has led a One Pill Can Kill and Faces of Fentanyl campaign to get the message out there. And today we're announcing a public service announcement. Fentanyl is death in disguise, to help get the message across to as many people as possible. We need this message to be circulated widely, and we need your help to do that. Simply spreading this message will educate and will save lives. Second, I want to talk about the work we are doing to address the drug dealers that sell this poison, which causes death, especially among our youth. We partnered for several years with the DEA and numerous local law enforcement agencies to target these street-level dealers who cause these deaths. This program is known as the Overdose Justice Task Force. It's now operating across the entire district. And just the past few years, we've prosecuted 51 of these cases. And these cases are important because, as the DA mentioned, the penalties that can be imposed under federal law are significant. A 20-year mandatory minimum sentence can be imposed for these types of crimes. And the point of that is to get the message across. People have to know if you're going to be selling counterfeit pills, which we all know are laced with fentanyl and has a risk of being laced with fentanyl, you're going to suffer the consequences of doing so. In the Inland Empire, over the past year and a half, we've filed 7 cases alleging distribution of fentanyl resulting in death. In one case filed by my office just last year, a 36-year-old man, Jason Gray Saha, was charged in a 5-count indictment stemming from a deadly evening in San Bernardino County 3 years ago. In January 22nd, 2020, after a night out at a bar, Mr. Saha sold fentanyl-laced cocaine to friends and acquaintances. He killed 4 people and severely injured another. Mr. Saha has an October 17th trial date, and if convicted, will face a mandatory minimum sentence of 20 years. I want to also note that Mr. Steve Filson, the father of one of the victims, Jessica, is here today joining us. He should know, and all of you should know, that he has our deepest sympathies, and I acknowledge, respect, and am impressed by the courage he is showing in coming forward to get the message across that this epidemic must be stopped. The case against Mr. Saha demonstrates our office's commitment to holding drug dealers responsible for their role in fatal poisonings. This case dramatically illustrates how dangerous this drug has become and how serious this danger is to our community. Purported pharmaceutical pills on the black market almost certainly contain fentanyl, and by selling this poison, these drug dealers are causing deaths. This epidemic is one that requires our full attention and will receive our full attention. We in federal law enforcement, together with our colleagues on the state and local side, will continue to press forward to address this epidemic to ensure that our youth are educated and that those who peddle in this poison are held accountable. Thank you.
Good morning. Bill Bodner, Special Agent in Charge, Drug Enforcement Administration, Los Angeles Field Division. We have focused a lot of attention on the increase both nationally and locally of drug-caused deaths, especially deaths by fentanyl poisoning. In the Inland Empire in 2020, there were 1,199 drug-caused deaths, 537 of which involved fentanyl. In 21, there were 1,380 drug-caused deaths, 742 involving fentanyl. The trend of more deaths and a larger proportion of those deaths resulting from fentanyl continues each and every year. There is another part to this story, and that is the huge number of people who are poisoned and survive. The best available data we have suggests that over 9,700 residents of the Inland Empire were poisoned and survived in 2021. How and why is this happening? Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that appears in many places in the illicit drug supply chain, but there are two specific areas where it is causing the most harm in our community. The first is in fake prescription pills, oxycodone, Percocet, Xanax. These are pills manufactured by the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation cartel to appear identical to real prescription drugs. The reality is there are no pharmaceutical ingredients in the pills. The only active ingredient is fentanyl. The pills are sold on the streets and over social media apps, and many times the users don't know they have been deceived until it's too late. The second area is fentanyl mixed with cocaine or mistaken for cocaine. Retail drug dealers will sometimes mix fentanyl and cocaine in attempts to create a pure euphoric high. This cocktail, mixing a stimulant and an opiate to create what's known as a speedball, has been around for decades, but the modern day synthetic version is incredibly dangerous and leaves no room for mistakes in chemistry. Oftentimes, too much fentanyl is put in the mixture, and the result in the unsuspecting user is poisoning and sometimes death. At the wholesale level, fentanyl is trafficked by the same organizations moving methamphetamine and cocaine. Cocaine and fentanyl are similar in appearance and packaged similarly at the wholesale level as well. We have seen many cases where distributors have accidentally provided kilogram packages of fentanyl to other traffickers who were expecting kilogram packages of cocaine. And as the drugs are further distributed, the misrepresentation of the fentanyl as cocaine causes a large number of poisonings and deaths. So what are the steps we can take and are taking today to address the fentanyl crisis? Because of the deception involved in the distribution of fentanyl, specifically fake pills and cocaine mixed with or mistaken for fentanyl, providing education and building awareness is the number one thing we can do to immediately reduce the threat to the public. It is our hope that when we help create a PSA or speak to a group of teenagers at a school, we are empowering people with knowledge about fentanyl, what it is, what it does to the body, and where it is in the illicit drug supply chain so they can make better decisions about their personal drug use. It's equally important we continue a strong law enforcement response to the issue. In partnership with U.S. Attorney Estrada, DA Hestron, DA Anderson, Sheriff Bianco, and Sheriff Dicus, DEA is pursuing a two-pronged strategy to address fentanyl where it is causing the most harm in our communities. First, going after the wholesalers, the people bringing 100,000 pill and greater quantities of fake prescription drugs containing fentanyl into our community, the people bringing multiple kilograms of fentanyl powder into our community, The challenge for us is in the greater Los Angeles area is a major transshipment center for drugs entering the United States from Mexico and transiting to the Northwest, Midwest, and East Coast. Easy freeway access with a maze of connections, a number of major airports, train and bus stations, and a significant freight hub with trucks leaving daily for all corners of the United States unfortunately support the drug trade. This means that when there is a drug threat in our country, Southern California and the IE will bear a disproportionate impact of it. This enforcement strategy led to the seizure of over 7 million fake pills and 450 kilograms of fentanyl powder last year. Make no mistake about it, when we reduce the drug supply and hold those responsible for distributing the drugs accountable, we are reducing the drug harm in the community. The second part of our enforcement strategy is Operation OD Justice, an informal task force made up of federal, county, and local law enforcement officers working together to hold dealers responsible when the drugs they distribute cause a death. When someone dies of a drug poisoning, DEA agents work side by side with county deputies and city police officers to trace the drugs back to the supplying dealer. Federal law allows for the filing of an enhanced drug distribution charge when a death results. The penalty for this charge, as Mr. Estrada mentioned, is 20 years in prison. The charge can be filed even if only one pill or one dose of a drug is sold, if it can be proven that that specific dose caused the death. These cases are significant because drug distribution is a greed-motivated serial crime. And in my experience, the cycle of drug distribution and resulting harm continues until there is law enforcement intervention. We have investigated multiple cases where a sole drug dealer caused multiple poisonings and deaths in a single day or weekend. And my question is, what should our expectations be the next day or the next weekend if law enforcement does not intervene and arrest the dealer? The reality is, if law enforcement does not intervene, we should expect the cycle to continue, and that is why this particular part of our strategy is so important for the health and safety of our community. Finally, I'd like to thank the parent groups who have done the incredibly difficult job of sharing their personal stories with the public. They have significantly raised awareness about fentanyl. Until every teenager knows, until every American knows the dangers of fentanyl, our mission is not complete. I'll introduce now San Bernardino Assistant District Attorney, Simon Umscheid. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here today. I really appreciate it. I apologize because I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. I'm here today. Regrettably, Jason Anderson, our district attorney, was not able to be here due to a last-minute personal conflict. So last year, San Bernardino County declared fentanyl a public health emergency. Our office joined other county departments in an effort to raise awareness, education, and prevention. In November, our office launched Act Now, which is an awareness campaign and training that's immediately available to download and share. It has been presented to nearly a dozen schools, empowering those schools' faculties, the parents, and community members to use their own voice to fight back against issues like this that are killing our loved ones. We know the county, the state, and international borders are not stopping fentanyl. But by standing here alongside our other partners, we want to send a clear message that we're not stopping our efforts to hold those accountable who choose profits over human life. We recognize the loss that many parents, siblings, children, and community members feel losing a loved one to fentanyl, and the courage it takes to stand up and fight against it happening to another family. We want to thank those families for showing up here today. It takes courage. I want to introduce to you Steve Filson. He's the founding member of VOID, Victims of Illicit Drugs, and also, most importantly, a father who lost his daughter to the poison fentanyl.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this most important event. This past Sunday marked 3 years since my wife, Cherie, here with me, found our daughter, Jessica, and her boyfriend, Nicholas, dead at their home in the city of Redlands. Choosing to use cocaine to celebrate Nick's birthday, the product they purchased, unknown to them, contained fentanyl. They partied and didn't wake up. The effects of her death will linger forever. My wife is one of the strongest people I know, but through that facade, always on her mind is the reality that the greatest love of her life is no longer here. A blessing born of tragedy is the miracle of our precious granddaughter, Alara. She's now 6 years old, is with us, and thankfully monopolizes our lives, permitting us to move forward. We try to look at it in a way in which we can either immerse ourselves in grief, or we can choose to move in a manner that provides a meaningful legacy in which the circumstances of their deaths can save lives. I'd like you to remember 3 things. Fentanyl changes everything. Most importantly, fentanyl changes everything. But for fentanyl, Jessica, Nicholas, and thousands of others would still be with us. Number 3, fentanyl is a problem that most don't even know exists. VOID, an acronym for Victims of Illicit Drugs, was formed with the belief that education and awareness are the most effective method in which to save lives due to this scourge. Knowledge is power, and our society needs to understand the deadly nature of this poison. People are being deceived into believing they are taking one thing when in reality it isn't. Fake pills mimicking legitimate pharmaceuticals but made of nothing but a neutral binder and fentanyl have flooded our society. DEA statistics now show that 6 of 10 pills distributed on the black market contain that 2 milligram fatal dose of fentanyl. As we constantly preach to our audiences and the kids that we talk to, if you don't get it from a physician or a pharmacy, don't take it. It's fake 100% of the time, no exceptions. It's also added to other street drugs like heroin, as in Jessica's case, cocaine, methamphetamine, and we even hear of incidents involving cannabis. The risk of death is ever present, and the public must understand that the ability to experiment and casually use what some contend to be a recreational drug no longer exists. That first experiment could very well be your last. VOID feels 3 areas of endeavor need to be undertaken. Education and awareness. That's our responsibility as parents. We've already explained the importance, and one that not only VOID but many others nationwide have undertaken as their mission. Enforcement and prosecution. We seem to agree that we're not going to arrest our way out of this in the traditional sense. However, accountability and serious consequences surrounding the manufacture and distribution of this poison needs to occur. And in those cases involving death, those responsible need to be charged according to the appropriate murder or other criminal statutes. That's beginning to occur in Riverside and San Bernardino County and within federal jurisdictions. Law enforcement is aggressively investigating, and prosecutors are filing appropriate charges when the evidence is present. Intervention and treatment. We as a society, once and for all, need to have that serious conversation to address addiction and mental health that continue to plague our communities. The stigma surrounding this subject needs to stop. These afflictions are not a choice, they're a disease. Therefore, a legitimate level of intervention and treatment needs to be devised, made readily available, and in some situations mandated. But that's a complex subject and for another time for discussion. In closing, our society has seemingly lost its mind. 2 Riverside Sheriff's deputies murdered recently in separate incidents over a 2-week period. 6 people, including a 10-month-old baby, murdered execution style in Tulare County. 11 murdered in a shooting in Monterey Park over the weekend. And continuing to lead the pack, illicit fentanyl. Nationally, on average, deaths occur at a rate of approximately 9 every hour, over 200 a day, around 75,000 annually. As previously stated, in 2021, nationwide, we sadly surpassed just over 107,000 illicit drug deaths of which approximately 75,000 were directly linked to illicit fentanyl. I wish I were wrong, but sadly, I believe those numbers will increase once published in the upcoming months. That figure truly illustrates what I talked about at the beginning. Fentanyl changes everything. The quicker we come to that realization, the quicker we can have that conversation and work together to develop a meaningful strategy to address it. The awareness initiative announced today is an answer to the prayers of thousands living this nightmare. The efforts of federal and local law enforcement, along with federal and local prosecutors in bringing this matter to the forefront, provides further legitimacy to our grassroots efforts. There's much left to do, and we're here to fight this seemingly endless battle alongside you. I invite everybody to visit our website, stopthevoid.org. Stopthevoid.org. There are 2 links, one both in English and Spanish, to a documentary. It's 20 minutes. I urge you to watch it with your friends, your families, your children, your grandchildren, whoever. It tells our stories, and it illustrates what the problem actually is. Jessica, Nick, rest in peace. We love you. We miss you. And again, thank you for including us in today's event.
Just to finish up, if you are watching this press conference here or anywhere, and there are young people in your life, have a conversation with them today. Don't put it off. Tell them the truth about the dangers they face now, today. And that, as was stated earlier, the days of experimentation and recreational drug use, those days are over. We just don't know it yet as a society. In order to help you as parents, as uncles, as aunts, as grandparents, to have that conversation, there's a PSA video that we're going to show just in just a minute, and that you all have access to. So can we go ahead and show the video?
Most areas will see lots of sun.
Stop breathing. My daughter, she's 17. Help her! Stop breathing. She got my daughter, she's 17. Help her! She's leaving for college next week.
Fentanyl is death in disguise. One pill can kill.
She's leaving for college next
And you can't. Fentanyl is death. A message from the United States Attorney's Office, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the District Attorney's Offices of San Bernardino and Riverside Counties. The United States Attorney's Office, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the District Attorney's Offices of San Bernardino and Riverside Counties.
It's short, but it gets the point across. Please spread that message. Help us to educate our public. People's lives depend on it. I'll take any questions you may have, and not just for me, but for any of the speakers up here today. Yes, Paul.
Mike, I think this is the 3rd or 4th time I've covered a news briefing concerning an awareness campaign, and that's over the last 2 years. And I was looking at the CBP numbers, and in that period, they're saying there have been close to 5 million contacts at the southern border. And that's just the known or documented number. Of course, the shadow number probably is larger, or at least equal to that. So there have been some references here to the international border and the free flow of this product and other dangerous drugs. And what I'm trying to understand is Biden administration policy. We have 2 federal representatives here, so maybe you can clarify this. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of heat behind any of the border enforcement. In fact, it seems to be going the other way. You have him suing Arizona to remove, by all accounts, a pretty pathetic border control device. You have the stay in Mexico policy being challenged by the Biden administration. You have forcing states to sue to try to keep it in place to prevent scathe of border crossers that seems to be unabated. And in all those border crossings, there can't be any doubt that fentanyl is just coming across by the boatload. So what is it? An awareness campaign is wonderful, and conversations with young people, of course, are critical, but this just goes back to more or less a Just Say No to Drugs campaign. What really is the Biden regime doing to preclude this from worsening or intensifying and prevent further deaths? Can somebody explain that?
Sure. I'm happy to address that first and then have Special Agent in Charge Bill Bodner address it. So first and foremost, this isn't a Just Say No campaign. The awareness and the education is critical here because the circumstances have changed. And I believe someone mentioned up here that we can't arrest our ways out of this. I completely agree with that. Education is paramount, so we have to get the message out there. In terms of what we're doing with the seizures, we are seizing incredible amounts of this drug coming across the border, prosecuting those individuals. We're working to get to the higher level individuals in these drug trafficking organizations to prosecute them, and the guideline ranges and the consequences for that are significant. But there's a huge amount of this narcotic coming across. We're not going to be able, unfortunately, to catch every truckload or carload of fentanyl that comes up. When we find it, we will prosecute it. But because there is so much out there, the education component is critical. And I think that's one of the key messages that you should take away from today. Bill, do you want to?
Yeah, Bill, the only thing I'd add is that the border is incredibly complex. And what I mean by that is we oftentimes try to make it a simple solution, just close down the border. The reality is there's boats coming up the coast, and those boats will contain drugs if the land border is tightened up. There's ultralight aircraft used to fly across the border. There's just so many different ways, and contraband's been coming across the border for hundreds of years. What the issue is the nature of the drug that's coming into our communities today. And as Steve said, fentanyl changes everything. Fentanyl changes everything. It's the deadliness of the drug that's causing the problem.
All right. Yes.
2 weeks ago, I was in San Diego and at a Rotary Club meeting, and Randy Grossman, who is the U.S. attorney in charge of Imperial and San Diego County, spoke. He said fentanyl rise was astronomical. Some of the questions to him were about Narcan. Should parents be putting their children with Narcan? He said that his 2 college-age students went back to college and they both had Narcan kits with them. Could you address that in some respect?
I can start off. I think Narcan is incredibly important. In Riverside County, all of our deputy sheriffs and police officers are equipped with Narcan, and it's used every day to save the life of someone who is dying from fentanyl and other opioid poisoning. However, it's not a panacea. There are problems with Narcan. For instance, it takes a massive dose of Narcan to counteract the effects of fentanyl. That's one problem. It also, when somebody is dying of fentanyl, even if they are administered Narcan, they oftentimes are in jeopardy of having brain damage or other injury because of the drug and because of what it causes. It causes shutdown in the bodily organs. I'm not a doctor, but if we didn't have Narcan, the 500 deaths in 2021 from fentanyl, over 500 deaths in Riverside County, you could add a 0 to that. It's every day people are being revived with Narcan by our deputy sheriffs and our police officers. So it is incredibly important, but as the U.S. Attorney stated, the education component, in my mind, is the most important. So there are different facets of this. Prosecution is one part, enforcement is one part, but there's nothing more important than the educational component. So anybody else want to comment on Narcan?
Sure. I will say that I completely agree with what the district attorney said regarding Narcan. There is a concern, though, that it creates a false sense of security, that their young people think I can take these counterfeit pills because I have Narcan. That is a message that should not be supported. It's not accurate. people don't necessarily know how to use it appropriately. If you're alone taking a counterfeit oxy pill or Adderall pill, you're not going to be able to administer it on yourself. So I think it's creating a lot of false narratives that need to be cleared up. The best policy here is to avoid these counterfeit pills, given the prevalence of fentanyl in these pills and in our community. Narcan is certainly a useful tool, but it creates a false sense of security for our young people, and they need to understand that's not going to be enough to help them when a dire situation hits.
The only thing I'll add to support that, in fact, I carry Narcan. I have it with me right now. Here's what I'll say to echo what we've already heard. Right now in the United States, and this is tracked by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, strangely, they're the ones that track this, the average administration of Narcan is 1.1 doses. So it's actually over 1 dose. So that goes to what these gentlemen are saying. It could create a false sense of security that 1 dose is going to instantly save a life. I carry it because I hope to just keep someone barely alive until first responders can get there and administer more of it if that's what needed. But on average, to highlight that, it's in the United States, more than 1 dose is being administered each time.
Other questions? Another one? Any other questions? We thank you all for being here today. It's important. Thank you very much. Did you have, was there a question? I saw Go ahead. I have heard about test kits, but again, it goes back to what the U.S. Attorney just said. It seems like as a society, we're looking for ways to still be able to use drugs recreationally and say kind of it's okay and, you know, avoid death. And that is just, it's not going to happen. Fentanyl has changed everything about the use of drugs, the sale of drugs, the prosecution of drugs. It's all different now. And what people have to understand is that if you use illegal drugs today, there's a good chance that fentanyl is going to kill you. And testing it or relying on Narcan is delusional, and it's not going to work. Testing it is, test kits are as we found out many times with COVID test kits, they're not always reliable. And so, you know, obviously people are going to put their faith and their life in the hands of a test kit. It's not smart. Thank you all.